Very good morning to you. It's Jim from Maverickstar Observatory. Before we get into this video, what we're going to be talking about is just exactly how fast the magnetic North Pole is migrating across our northern hemisphere right now. Just to clear up a few things, when we talk about the magnetic North Pole, we're just referring to the one that is in the northern hemisphere, and to save confusion for people, but it is actually the magnetic South Pole that we're tracking. And the North Pole, magnetic North Pole, is just leaving the peninsula of Antarctic. So just to clarify that, but for just simplicity, and to save confusion, we refer to it as the North Pole because it's in the northern hemisphere, but it is actually, like I say, the magnetic South. I'd like to say, a huge thanks to our patrons, and it is always a few that chip in a couple of quid on the PayPal, but nevertheless, it is these people, as well as our superstars that have the equipment they have got in other countries around the world now, that keep the information coming in their location to us here, and we keep updating the website. I've got a couple of magnetometer readings from Kemble in Canada, which I'll be adding to the website over the next couple of days. And as usual, Kendall, amazing that you are regularly supplying this data for us. You are, by all accounts, a real superstar, as well as all those people that help chip in a few bucks. Okay, so our magnetic North Pole, as you know, we track it every 3 seconds. We take a reading of its current location as it's migrating over the northern hemisphere, and I'm going to put in perspective just how fast the magnetic North Pole is migrating. Just to put it in a simple analogy for you, if you stood on the location right now where the magnetic North Pole is, you would be able to walk alongside it because it is migrating that fast. If you stood there, you could watch it. If you was able to see it, you would be able to see it come past you. It's travelling, like we've been tracking, on average 5.1, 5.2 miles every month. So on average, it is moving 1,600 meters a week, and then you can easily do the math by dividing that 1.6 kilometers by 7, and you would get an average migration per day of around 228 meters per day. So that gives you an idea. Now, the other thing is, as you guys know, is that we are rapidly approaching probably a significant point. That is where we anticipate in 5 months' time, when the pole will begin to leave those strong field lines. The migration is slow in the strong field lines, but it's anticipated that once it crosses this mark that we class as the 40-degree mark, it will begin to accelerate from that point. If this is the case, our magnetosphere is going to significantly weaken, and we all know what the repercussions of that will be. It will be climate alteration as a result of the cosmic rays that will be inbound at that point. The climate might run away for the period of time that the magnetosphere is probably reduced to around 5, maybe 10%. We just don't know. And the reason why we don't know that is because even by excursions, the last one was 12,000 years ago, just as we was coming out of the last glacial period. And numbers of human beings wasn't in the numbers that they are today, certainly. And the other thing is, we wasn't recording the magnetic pole at that point because of the lack of technology and possible understanding of the poles. So we have now only 5 months. Now this is a theoretical theory, but based on some of the experiments which I've shared with you guys, I thought it was necessary to put it down on the table and show you guys. We recently tried to raise a bit of extra cash for the channel by switching the monetization on, but YouTube have flat out said that's not going to be the case. they've declined it. So, I don't understand why, we are being held back by even, platforms such as YouTube. It's a bit of a mystery. And, I don't understand why some of these bigger organisations aren't, forthcoming with the data that they have, and why they do not, anymore give the coordinates of the poles currently. It would raise suspicion that they behave in the way they do currently. We do our very best here to not just pinpoint the magnetic North Pole every month for you guys, but we're also invested in monitoring the stronger intensities around our planet. And of course, now that we have Michael in Colombia with a magnetometer, we're also now tracking the weakest intensity. And this weak intensity, this South Atlantic anomaly, is actually breaking apart into two pieces. One of those pieces is moving over towards Africa, and that means that the intensity will be weaker in not just Brazil, as it has been for quite some time, but also over in Africa. We are shortly to get a muon detector out to Michael as well, so we'll be getting some information on how much radiation is in that lower intensity region. But guys, if we do start to see the pole rapidly accelerate in the next 5 months, one thing we can be sure of is that cancer rates will increase. We know that cosmic rays are related to cancer, but also we are going to see a lot of not just human beings but animals across the range having cardiac arrest, because we also know that cosmic rays can alter cardiac arrhythmias. So those are just two of the things related to health that we are going to see. So I think it's well worth mentioning those. The other thing that we're going to see is not just the animal kingdom and the human species being affected, but we're going to see all the vegetation on our planet being affected as well, because cancer is not just related to animals. It is also related to all the species of vegetation across the biodiversity of our planet. On top of this, and I'm sorry, the news doesn't get any better, but whilst our magnetosphere is down, there is going to be a large influx of cosmic rays, and those will alter further the jet streams, and I suspect that we are going to see catastrophic climatic events at that point. So I know for a lot of us, we have been narrowly avoiding, some of the effects of climate change already, and we've pinpointed it out. We could show you every week, a catastrophic flood in some part of the world every single week now. This has displaced, as you know, millions and millions of people around the world. We are approaching another winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, and most of Europe, America, Canada and Russia are going to experience, in my view, extreme weather during the winter. So, it might be something you might want to prepare for. At the same time, and it couldn't be any worse, could it, guys, that we are being told now, for some reason, that all around the world our energy supply could be affected during this winter. We are also at a point in time where energy has never cost so much as it has right now. It makes me wonder what really is going on in the world, because there seems to be a demolition of our way of lives. We are seeing crop failures, we are seeing supply chains break down, we are seeing the changes to the Baltic shipping index. As we speak, our natural resources that we've been accustomed to enjoying seems to be under threat. I talked in the last week with regards to, this. Somebody must have known that by driving up energy costs, everything else in our world that we purchase would increase as a result of that. This was one thing that whoever is behind this, and I do believe that somebody is behind this, that could have been altered in terms of cost that would affect everything else in our world. Now, these energy companies are making more profits than they ever have done, and at the same time telling us that we might have to see power cuts, power outages. It's, we should be paying less if this is going to become, a frequent occurrence, not paying more. It's almost like they are putting the squeeze on everybody. Right now, people are losing their jobs. Clear. People are also, sadly, very sadly, losing their homes. So now is more of a time than ever for people to start taking some responsibility for what they might find themselves in, with regards to a situation or a catastrophe in the future. And that could be, gold, silver, other valuables that you could probably put aside or purchase. Food, storage. At the end of the day, we drink water and we cannot live without it, and we eat food and we cannot live without that. Other things we can manage and get by with. So, those two things should be priority on your list. And then, you have to think about what situation you might find yourself in, and therefore a bug out bag is an excellent choice. And there are plenty of videos that you can find on YouTube that shows you what sort of things you should be putting in that bag. But in my bag, I've got a medical kit, I've got some basics with regards to pharmaceuticals, I have temporary shelters, a means to cook food, like a little gas burner, plenty of bottles stored for running that gas burner for a prolonged period of time, a way of being able to chop up some wood in case I need to make a fire. I've got a wet tree saw so I can cut branches straight off the trees, then prepare them and they can be burned and we can keep warm, that sort of thing. But if you look, there are some really great videos out there on YouTube that you can get your hands on, and it will give you a good idea. Another thing is while you might be out and about having a walk around, why don't you, like I do, note where certain things are? I mean, there's a lot of public walk paths around by where we live, and we live on the cusp of open green belts, so there's a lot of bridle walks that we can go on. But I've noticed things like little duck ponds in farmers' fields, so if worse come to worse, I could source at least a duck. We also live in an area where there's lots of pheasants, so there is also those I could get my hands on. But another thing I note whilst I'm walking around is places that thrive where mushrooms are concerned. Now, you've got to be very careful, but I have identified and collected mushrooms before, so I know exactly what I'm looking for with regards to a few species of those. So I'm looking at where things like wild strawberries grow at certain points of the time, and wild garlic and things like that. If you get a book and you learn about foraging, you'll easily be able to identify things on these walks that you can, if you need to, put your hands on and get a simple meal together. You might also want to note where streams are and brooks are, so that if you need to get some water, you can fill up your canister and purify it with your either water tablets or your filters, or if worst comes to worst, sterilize it by boiling it for a few minutes. So these are the things we all should be making sure that we've got tucked in our belts right now, so to speak. I always wonder why, in these curriculums at schools, they never taught simple survival. You see, we've become that dependent that life is always going to continue as it is for us in this highly advanced technological society that we've got, that we will never have to go back to those times. But that couldn't be any further from the truth, and I think you would agree with me with what we've witnessed so far this year and the catastrophes that we've witnessed so far this year. We've seen millions of people simply displaced, and not only displaced but starve, and through drinking dirty water and not having the knowledge to clean it and purify it, they've brought illness to themselves. But for why, I can't even imagine. These things are not taught to children in school. We have to take them to the scouts or something like that, or for the girls, the brownies or the beavers or whatever. It's a shame that a lot of people are not teaching the next generations that that it's okay whilst the system is up and running. But I think you'll agree with me, our system is very vulnerable. It's vulnerable to solar flares. It can knock out the grid. The Carrington event is proof that it can happen, and luckily enough, back then the only technology that it affected, because that was pretty much the only technology they have, was the telegraphs and the lines on the telegraphs. But if we had certain energy surges today off a solar flare, and even more so during a time where our magnetosphere is weak, we could have grids go down and they would not go back up in a short space of time, because there is nowhere on this planet where they have stockpiled transformers. So if the transformers started to blow, there would be no way anybody could get their electric back on in a short space of time. And that's a big vulnerability for us in this technological advanced world. There are other scenarios that can take the grid down, like severe cold weather, frost and ice building up on them power lines, and therefore weighing them to the point where they break. We saw in Texas last winter how it had affected over 1 million people, and how the damage that it had caused, and largely because the grid was vulnerable to this, and then secondly because people were vulnerable to it. They hadn't prepared their homes for such events. Now, think about it. If we are going to start seeing these events occur more frequently, then we need to add that to our to-do list, to protect and make safe our homes from these conditions. There isn't a lot when you have mudslides and you live in a vulnerable spot. As I've talked of before, check your geographic location, and just because it hasn't flooded, don't expect that to always be the case. In the last 80 years, it could happen tomorrow, and this is what catches people out. We have just took it for granted that just because this area no longer floods, it's a perfect spot to build houses on, which couldn't be any further from the truth, because these events do reoccur. Okay, so basically we have 5 months, and the clock is ticking, and that clock is ticking, and it is the time is getting shorter for you to make your preparations, if you haven't already. Live in a time, guys, which is very rare, and I always say this. The last magnetic reversal was 780,000 years, and it is back on our door right now as we speak. And like I said at the beginning of the video, you could actually walk alongside the magnetic pole at its current rate of migration. If you want to help support our observatory and help in the gathering of this information and making it possible, there is a link down there. You can help. You can also, if you want to, become a patron of ours, and we can keep informing people of this rare anomaly that is happening as it migrates, like we do every month. But it does require a little bit of support. So, you know, unless people step up to that line and want to help, even in a small way, you know, we won't be able to maintain this. And now is not the time to not maintain what we do. So there's a link down there if you want to help support. You know, I surely hope that you do. You're not just helping the observatory, you're helping now 55,000 almost subscribers that are interested and very keen to find out more of this current anomaly that we're all living through. Guys, the only other thing to say is, as I usually do, is be safe, and bye for now.